Hello and welcome to Studio 501c3. I'm your host, Kim Jones, Executive Director of the Nonprofit Village. We feature nonprofit organizations designated as 501c3 by the IRS for providing a public benefit. Your donations to them in most cases are tax deductible. The show is a collaboration between Nonprofit Village and Montgomery Community Media, highlighting our county's best nonprofit programs and services. Watch Montgomery has a mission to reduce partner violence in Maryland. With me today is Executive Director Carolyn Hoffman. Carolyn, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So we have a lot to learn. I think our viewers will be interested in knowing about this specific program because it operates a little differently. Watch Montgomery reduces intimate partner violence by ensuring that victims have access to services, abuse can stop quickly. Can you describe a little bit about what those programs are, what the activities are that kind of move, because the organization is really helping to move towards justice. And that's a little bit different than always having just a direct service program.
Right, exactly. So we don't actually provide direct services to victims, but we do support their well-being through, as you said, systemic change. And so really we have one program that has multiple parts, and we start with we have a pool of about 70 volunteers who collect data in the courthouse for us. And so we focus specifically on domestic violence cases, both criminal and civil cases. And our monitors are trained to fill out a monitoring form and collect the same data for every case that they monitor. We then take that data, we enter it into our database, and we analyze it. So we're able to produce reports that have findings and recommendations for how to best support survivors and also how to keep our courthouses safe in Montgomery County.
Okay, so you're working through the court system. So I want to explore, I guess, a little bit more about why the court as a vehicle for systemic change. You know, it could be any number of other vehicles that you use, but why was the court system really defined as the vehicle for these protections?
Sure. So, you know, as domestic violence experts, court and protective orders specifically are a really good option for victims who are trying to either, you know, distance themselves from their abusers or to have certain requirements for their abusers' behavior, such as emergency financial support, you know, keeping a certain distance, no contact, custody. So they kind of encompass a lot of different options. And when we were started by our co-founders, they actually began as victim advocates, providing those direct services. And they realized that a lot of victims are encountering the same barriers that all of the other ones were. So it really showed that this was a larger systemic issue of how accessible and how safe the courts are for victims. So they started Court Watch to really address the transparency and accountability of our court systems and really hold them responsible for the safety of victims while they're in the courthouses.
And when was the organization founded? And tell us a little bit about the founders also.
Sure. We were founded in 2010. Our co-founders are Judy and Lori, and they have been phenomenal helps. They're both still on our board, actually, and very involved. They're major champions in Montgomery County for the safety of domestic violence victims, and they've poured their heart and soul into this organization and still continue to do so today. So we're actually the only organization in Maryland collecting this specific data. So they really found a gap in services to kind of fill that gap and really be able to provide those recommendations by being physically in the courthouses.
So you said Court Watch Montgomery is the only organization in Maryland that's doing this, but you are focusing your data collection on Montgomery County only, or is it statewide?
Yes, so we are in Montgomery County only in the district courthouses. So there's one in Rockville and one in Silver Spring, and that's where our programs are. At one point we were doing circuit court, but we just weren't seeing the volume of protective orders in order to continue that. So it might change as the years go by, but right now we're just in the district courts in Montgomery County.
Okay, so I want to go back to, can this be a model for other jurisdictions, or have you been approached by other jurisdictions to use this same this same model in order to do data collection, reporting, in order to protect victims of domestic violence?
Absolutely. We've been approached, and we have many partners that are state partners and national partners that are interested in our work. And the great thing about our data is that, we're specific to Montgomery County, but what we're recommending and what we're seeing are best practices and safety concerns that aren't just unique to Montgomery County. So we're really able to take that and kind of scale it. So, we have had other organizations who are interested in starting in Prince George's County since it's next door. And so it really is replicable, but it has not been yet by anybody else, and we have not expanded yet.
Okay. And a little bit, you had mentioned a couple of minutes ago about, I think, publishings or how the data is published. Are these put out as white papers? Are they just statistical reports? Is it only reports going to the court system? How are the publishings done, and how are they used, I guess?
Yeah, so right now we publish on our websites, our social media. We distribute to partners, to the courts. We sometimes also ask for judges or court personnel or other partners to comment on our reports prior to publishing them so that we can really get a feel for what that data looks like. And then, from that point too, we ask that other organizations who have comments provide us with that information. Most of our reports are large academic reports between 5 to 25 pages. But, especially these days, we're trying to kind of have a more digestible format. So we are also kind of exploring different formats of a one-pager that's mostly visuals and being able to explain our data in a more digestible way for the general public. But we do also have these larger academic reports that really dive deep into our data.
I see. Okay. So that's good to know. I want to get a little bit more into those that really benefit from the work that you do, but we're going to take a short break, and afterwards we'll find out more about how Court Watch provides the access to justice and services that stop abuse quickly and permanently. You're watching Studio 501c3 on Montgomery Community Media. Stay with us.
I think someone at my friend's school has this thing called autism. My friend's brother's son has autism. My neighbor's son has autism. My son has autism.
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 88 children is diagnosed with autism. That's a 1,000% increase in the last 40 years. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Brush, brushy, brush, brushy, brush, brush your teeth. Every day and every night. Brush, brushy, brush, 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 brush. Now it's your parents' turn. Here's what you gotta do. You have to have your toothbrush so that they can brushy brush your teeth. Good job, you're almost done. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now spit. Help your teeth stay healthy. Brushy brush with a grown-up every day.
Welcome back to Studio 501c3. Today I'm talking with Carolyn Hoffman, Executive Director of Court Watch Montgomery. So we were talking before the break a little bit about the reports. One of the statistics that, if you can share, how many people in Maryland actually are victims of domestic violence? I'm assuming it's a large number. That is one of those hidden numbers.
Right. So national numbers, state by state, it depends on the county and the city and the location, and that's not as widely available. But nationally, we expect 1 in 4 women identifying individuals to experience domestic violence, and about 1 in 9 male identifying individuals. So it's very, very prominent, unfortunately. And, a lot of people, it's not a great aspect for them to be able to go and access the court system for historical reasons or, concerns over documentation, immigration status. So it really is kind of dependent on what that specific victim wants, whether or not the court is even a good option for them. But we do see in some of the data that we've pulled from the courts that they've actually put out themselves is that, we have hundreds to thousands of protective orders being filed in the state. So there are a lot of people who are accessing these services, and they can be a really good and kind of versatile option for people to pick and choose the reliefs that are important to them.
Okay, so thank you for that. But there are still people that fail, I guess, to get the proper legal protection. They're still counted in your data. They're still reflected in the advocacy work that you do. But what happens with some of those individuals that don't get that access for whatever reason, either by choice or unknown, they just don't know about what's available to them?
Yeah, so we have a lot of really great domestic violence service providers throughout Montgomery County and the state of Maryland who really help to kind of safety plan and individualize a plan for each individual victim. Because as I said, some people need a custody order and some people have family that they can go stay with. So really having those direct service providers to kind of fill those gaps when the legal system isn't the best access point is really helpful.
And those become your partners. Those become referral sources for you.
Yes. So we actually are quiet observers. We don't, unless, on the rare occasion where a judge asks us a specific question, we're just there to observe and to collect data. So we, if we get phone calls from victims who are asking questions, we refer to those direct service providers. But in the courthouse, unless somebody specifically comes up to us and asks us a question, we are really there as silent participants.
Okay. I know of other direct service domestic violence prevention programs or programs that provide those direct services that also talk about you. They mention you. So you've got a wide network out there. But what about the viewer, the person that learns about you or reads about you and says, I want to help in some way? What can an individual do to help with the work that you're doing specifically?
Sure. So we are predominantly volunteer-based. I'm the only full-time staff person. We have 2 part-time staff who help with volunteer management and our database. So we are always looking for more volunteers. We have a pretty intensive training process with shadowing and classroom-style trainings. And really, we're always recruiting and doing those training processes for anybody who's involved. And anybody who isn't interested in directly monitoring, we do have other special projects like advocacy, where, for legislation, we also have projects like increasing awareness for different issues that affect domestic violence victims. So we're always searching for volunteers, and they can apply on our website.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we're out of time today. I know there's a lot more to learn, so we're going to make sure to put up your website. Carolyn, I want to thank you for joining me today on the show and talking about Court Watch Montgomery. To find out more about how you can take advantage of the resources and possibly volunteer to help, go to their website at courtwatchmontgomery.org. I'm Kim Jones, your host on Studio 501c3. We'll feature another nonprofit in Montgomery County next time here on Montgomery Community Media. See you soon. This episode of Studio 501c3 was sponsored by MBA Growth Partners.